Jordan Worth seemed like the perfect neighbor, a calm, compassionate preschool teacher with a loving husband, Miles. But behind the closed doors of their seemingly ordinary home, an unimaginable horror unfolded. In a case that shocked the nation, detectives uncovered a level of brutality so chilling, even seasoned investigators were left speechless. The story of Jordan and Miles Worth would forever change the way we see evil, revealing a dark side of control and violence no one saw coming. It all began in the small, sleepy town of Waverly Hills, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, where weekend barbecues were common, and where crime was almost non-existent. That's what made the events of March 8, 2019 so jarring. When a neighbor called the police to report a blood trail in the snow leading from a house on Amber Lane, no one imagined the horror waiting inside. The house belonged to Jordan Worth, a 28-year-old preschool teacher known for her gentle demeanor and her involvement in local charity drives. From the outside, everything about her life seemed picture perfect. But what the responding officers found told a much darker story. Upon entering the house, they were hit with the unmistakable stench of blood and decay. The living room was eerily still. Nothing appeared out of place until they reached the upstairs hallway. There, the walls were splattered with blood. Furniture was overturned, mirrors shattered, and deep grooves marked the wooden floor as if something or someone had been dragged. Yet no body was visible, no sounds, no struggle, just silence and an overwhelming sense of dread. In the middle of it all sat Jordan Worth. She was on the floor of the living room, calm, motionless, her eyes empty. Her clothes were clean, her hands folded in her lap. When asked where her husband was, she gave no reply, not a word, not even a glance, just silence. The officers searched the house top to bottom, growing more disturbed with every minute. Blood was everywhere, on the stair railings, seeping under doorways, even smeared across the inside of a closet, and yet still no sign of her husband, Miles Worth. What began as a welfare check quickly turned into a full-scale investigation into one of the most disturbing cases the town had ever witnessed. The search intensified as more officers and forensic experts arrived at the scene. With Jordan offering no explanation and no sign of her husband, the team began a detailed sweep of the property. Every drawer was opened, every closet inspected, and every inch of the backyard combed. Hours passed, and still no answers. Then, an officer noticed something unusual in the living room, a subtle rise in the floor beneath an old, faded rug. It looked out of place, as if something had been covered up in a hurry. They pulled the rug aside and found a small, square hatch bolted shut. Breaking it open, they revealed a narrow crawl space that ran beneath the floorboards of the house. What hit them first was the smell. Thick, suffocating, unmistakably the scent of death. Crawling into the space, officers discovered the body of Miles Worth. But this wasn't a simple case of murder. His body was badly decomposed, but even in that state, the extent of the injuries was clear. Bones were broken in unnatural angles. Deep cuts ran across his limbs and back. Electrical burn marks scorched his skin. It was evident he hadn't died quickly. He had suffered immensely before the end. Medical examiners later confirmed that Miles had been tortured over several days. The injuries were deliberate, spaced out over time, showing a disturbing level of control. He hadn't just been killed, he had been systematically broken. There were signs of starvation, dehydration, and even chemical burns. Alongside the body, officers found chains, blood-soaked cloth, and an empty syringe. This discovery shattered any remaining doubt. This was not a crime of passion. It was something far more methodical, more monstrous. Jordan Worth, still silent and detached, remained seated upstairs as if none of it concerned her. As investigators began piecing together the timeline, they turned their attention to the relationship between Jordan and Miles Worth. From the outside, they had appeared to be a typical couple. Married for 5 years, no children, no history of public conflict. Jordan was praised by coworkers for her patience and warmth with children, while Miles was described as quiet and reserved, often working remotely from home. But as detectives spoke to neighbors and distant family members, cracks began to emerge in the perfect image. No one had seen Miles in person for months. Some had assumed he was traveling for work. Others thought he was simply reclusive. But the reality was far darker. Jordan had slowly isolated him over time. She took over their social media accounts, responded to messages pretending to be him, and even told friends that Miles was suffering from mental health issues and needed rest. No one questioned her. After all, she was calm, composed, and seemed deeply caring. But digital forensics revealed another side. On Jordan's encrypted laptop, recovered from a locked desk drawer, investigators found disturbing journal entries. Titled The Correction, the documents chronicled a twisted project Jordan had undertaken, a systematic effort to punish what she called Miles's deficiencies. Each injury was noted like a medical log, the date, the method, his reaction. She didn't see her actions as crimes, but as a form of discipline, a way to remake him. Jordan wrote that pain was the only path to clarity. Her words were clinical, detached, and deeply unsettling. She detailed how she controlled his meals, his access to water, and even timed how long he was allowed to sleep. With every new piece of evidence, it became increasingly clear. Jordan had not just committed murder. She had orchestrated a prolonged psychological breakdown of the man she once vowed to love. The more investigators uncovered, the more disturbing the case became. Though they had already found Miles's body in Jordan's incriminating journals, something still didn't sit right. There were gaps in the timeline, injuries that suggested he had been kept somewhere confined before his death. That led the forensic team to conduct one final, thorough inspection of the house. In the attic, behind a row of dusty storage boxes, they found an inconsistency in the wall structure. A section of drywall sounded hollow when tapped. After prying it open, they uncovered a hidden door, sealed from the outside and nearly invisible. Behind it was a small, windowless room, soundproofed. The walls were lined with foam padding. A single metal bed frame stood in the center, fitted with leather restraints. A camera had been mounted high in the corner, aimed directly at the bed. On a nearby shelf sat a small monitor and a stack of neatly labeled tapes. The floor was bare except for faint dark stains in the wood, blood, later confirmed through forensic testing. This wasn't a panic room or a storage space. It was a cell. The tapes were far worse than anyone expected. Investigators, some with decades of experience, admitted they had never seen anything so disturbing. Each recording showed calculated sessions of abuse, Jordan entering the room calmly, documenting everything with a clinical focus. She never shouted or appeared angry. Instead, she moved with quiet control, carrying tools, syringes, and timers. She often wore gloves. It was clear that she had designed this room for complete control and concealment. This discovery confirmed what they feared. Miles had been held captive for weeks, possibly months, in his own home. No windows, no light, no help. Jordan Worth had created a private world within her house where she ruled without question, and no one outside had ever noticed. The trial of Jordan Worth captivated the nation. News outlets broadcast every development, and people across the country watched in disbelief as the horrifying details came to light. Prosecutors laid out a timeline filled with precision and cruelty. They showed footage from the hidden room, read excerpts from her cold, analytical journals, and presented medical reports that confirmed the extent of Miles's prolonged suffering. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury sat in stunned silence as each piece was revealed. Jordan remained emotionless throughout the proceedings, never once expressing remorse or offering an explanation. Her defense team argued that she suffered from an undiagnosed psychological disorder, claiming she experienced dissociative states that made her unaware of her actions. They pointed to her clean criminal history and stable job as proof that she wasn't a monster, but someone in need of psychiatric help. But the prosecution countered with a chilling truth. Everything Jordan did was planned, recorded, and documented. Her journals weren't the ramblings of a confused mind. They were instructions, written in clear, rational detail. After a 4-week trial, the verdict was unanimous. Jordan Worth was found guilty of first-degree murder, torture, false imprisonment, and aggravated assault. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was filled with reporters, former neighbors, and Miles's surviving relatives. No one cried. There were no outbursts, just a heavy silence as the judge read the sentence aloud. Waverly Hills was never the same. The community, once built on trust and simplicity, became cautious and wary. The preschool where Jordan taught shut down permanently. Neighbors moved away. And for the officers who worked the case, The images from that crawl space and hidden room would never fade. The brutality, the coldness, the complete control, it redefined evil for everyone who witnessed it.